I want to be clear about one thing before I tell you how it ended. Bren was a cargo dog. Not a war animal. Not a trained security unit. The Cooperative's intake manifest listed him as Earth Origin Contraband-Detection Organism, Contract Grade, Non-Combat Classification. He had a vest with brass fittings and a patch on the left shoulder that said Working Dog, Do Not Pet, which no one in the history of that vest had ever obeyed. His job was to sit at the end of a pallet row and tell me, via a behavioral shift I'd learned to read over 4 years, whether the crates behind it smelled wrong. That was it. That was the whole job. He weighed 212 pounds and his head came level with my sternum. His face looked like it had been folded once too many times, and then left in the sun. Brindle coat, loose jowls, eyes the color of old creek water. At rest, he looked like something between a geological formation and a piece of furniture nobody had gotten around to moving. He was 9 years old. He snored. I was Specialist Cass Weld, 3 years into a civilian contract cargo run on the freighter Verith Spur, assigned to the Working Dog Compliance Program because I'd done a K9 rotation in my second year, and someone in logistics had written it into my file. The Verith Spur was a mid-tonnage bulk carrier, Kesavar Transit Lane 7, hauling processed agri-goods and medical stock on a 14-day loop. Nothing interesting had ever happened on the Verith Spur. I had read 11 novels in 8 months. The boarding team came through the outer hull at 0340 station time. I know the exact moment because I'd been awake for 6 minutes. I do that. Wake before the alarm. Lie there doing math in the dark. And the first impact registered as a sound below sound, something the ship's frame absorbed and passed upward through the deck plates into my back. Bren lifted his head, looked at the wall, looked at me. The ship alarm followed 4 seconds later. I had the vest on him, and the lead clipped before the second klaxon tone. Procedure for boarding events on a civilian transport is clear. Handler and dog to the nearest hardened compartment. Seal. Wait for station security to respond. The nearest hardened compartment was Cargo Bay 7, 2 corridors forward. I moved. Bren moved beside me, unhurried, his big shoulders rolling, nails clicking on the deck plates in a rhythm that had nothing urgent in it. Behind us, through 2 sealed bulkheads, I could hear the team working. They were fast, I'll give them that. The Cooperative's incident report, what I eventually saw of it, logged the initial breach at 0340 and the team's clearance of decks 3 through 6 at 0351, 11 minutes for 4 decks. 14 crew members accounted for and contained, none of them harmed, because the faction running this operation was after cargo manifests and transit encryption keys, not body counts. Professional, cold, thorough. I got to Cargo Bay 7, got the door sealed behind us, and stood in the dark between 2 rows of Agra pallets, while my hands ran through the options and came up short on all of them. I had a work vest and a lead. I had a dog. The Cooperative's response ETA was 40 minutes. Bren sat down beside my left knee. He did not appear to find any of this interesting. He put his chin on my thigh, and I put my hand on top of his head, and we waited. The team reached Deck 7 in 17 minutes. I heard them come through the forward junction seal. It's a particular sound, a compression pop, and then a high-frequency hiss as 2 atmosphere systems equalize, and then boots on plating, 6 sets, moving in the kind of organized quiet that means training. They'd have the bay layout from the ship's schematics. They'd know the only hardened compartment on the deck was the one I was standing in. The external panel beeped twice. Someone was working the override. Bren's ears moved. Just that. I did not give any command. I did not need to. I unclipped the lead and took 1 step back, because that was all the room I had, and I put my back against the pallet stack and I watched. The bulkhead door opened. The lights in Cargo Bay 7 are motion-triggered. They had been off while we stood in there. They came on now, full overhead, the flat industrial white of a working cargo space, and what the boarding team saw, arranged in that light at a distance of perhaps 4 meters, was 212 pounds of English mastiff. Bren had not moved from his sit. He was looking at them the way he looked at everything, with his creekwater eyes half-lidded, his enormous head still, his jowls settled around his jaw like curtains that had been hung by someone who'd stopped caring partway through the job. His chest moved, slow, in and out. His tail, down near the deck, gave one single movement, Not a wag. A pendulum. One arc, and still. He was not growling. He did not growl. 6 members of a Vethal splinter faction boarding team, operating under military extraction protocols with active armor and breaching equipment, stood in the open doorway of Cargo Bay 7. They did not come through. I cannot tell you what they saw when they looked at him, because I am not Vethal and I don't have their sensory range. What I can tell you is what I saw when I looked at them. The lead operative, slate purple plating over a standard configuration bilateral frame, raised one hand in a flat palm gesture to the team behind her. Stop! She did not take her eyes off Bren, her secondary limbs. The Vethal have a second pair of arms, shorter, articulated differently, used for close work and, I learned later, for signaling states of high biological alarm, were pressed flat against her torso, folded in, locked down. Behind her, the rest of the team was doing the same thing. Nobody said anything. Bren breathed. The lead operative took one step back, then another. The secondary arms did not unfold. She said something in Vethal faction dialect I didn't have the translation for, quiet and flat, and the team moved, back through the junction, back down the corridor. The forward junction seal cycled. The pressure pop came, the hiss. They were gone. I stood against the pallet stack and did not move for a while after that. Bren turned and walked back to me. He pushed his head against my hip, which was what he did when he wanted the spot behind his ear scratched, which was always, at all times, regardless of circumstance. I scratched it. He closed his eyes. Cooperative security response arrived at 0432. They found the outer hull breach sealed from the inside. The boarding team had locked their own entry point on the way out, and 14 crew members unharmed, and 2 manifest terminals untouched. A cargo specialist and a working dog in Bay 7, no breach, no contact. The security lead was a Cooperative-class officer, the kind built wide and low, with sensor arrays that fold out from the upper thorax. She came into Cargo Bay 7, took in the scene, and then stood in front of Bren for a long moment, with her arrays fully extended and angled down. Bren sat and looked at her. Her arrays folded back in. She made a note on her tablet, said "Handler Weld," in a tone that communicated nothing, and left. I got a debrief form, 3 pages. I filled out the sections about the breach time, and the team's equipment, and how long before I'd reached the bay, and at the end, there was a field marked Organism Status, Incident Period, with a drop-down menu. The options were Secured, Controlled, Deployed, and Other. I stared at those options for a while. I clicked Other, and left the comment field blank. The Cooperative filed their incident report 6 weeks later. I got a reference copy because the working dog contract requires handler disclosure. Most of it was standard. Breach classification, team identification, property assessment, 0 casualty notation. Page 11 had a section I had to read twice. It was headed Biological Designation Review, and it was 3 paragraphs long, and about 2/3 of it was redacted, solid black bars through the text. And what was left said, in the Cooperative Standard Procedural Register, Earth Origin Organism has been flagged for secondary review under Cooperative Apex Presence Protocol 14. Pending outcome, the organism's transit classification is suspended. Handler is advised not to rebook the current contract pending review notification, estimated 60 days. 60 days became 90. The review notification, when it came, was 4 sentences. Bren's transit classification was not reinstated. A new classification was issued instead. I read the new classification 3 times. I did not entirely understand it. I understood enough. Bren was asleep on the bay floor by then, his enormous head on my boot, snoring with the low rolling conviction of something that has never once in its life doubted that the space it occupied was the correct space to occupy. The overhead light caught the top of his skull. His chest rose, fell. I looked at the classification paper for another minute. Then I folded it and put it in my chest pocket and put my hand back on his head, and we sat there in Cargo Bay 7 while the Vareth spur ran its course through Kesavar Transit Lane 7, same as always, same as every other day, hauling agri-goods and medical stock, and one animal the Cooperative had just run out of words for.